In sport, as in life, many are accorded labels of greatness for their outstanding achievements on the field of play. In this day and age, it seems as if they come and go with an ever-increasing frequency. But there are those whose exploits are reserved for the history books, whose achievements vault them above and beyond greatness onto a pedestal reserved only for legends. Arnold Palmer's ability to carve out a round of golf with the skill of a surgeon has placed him side by side with the most legendary players the game has ever known. As a youth growing up in the small western Pennsylvania town of Latrobe, Arnold learned the game from his father. He found early success as a young amateur.
My first high school golf match, I was 13 years old, and I shot 71, which was 3 over par on a par 68 golf course, and I felt pretty good about that. It was fun for me. I had some success early, and that inspired me to work harder at the game.
A defining moment in Arnold Palmer's life came at the age of 24, when he won the 1954 United States Golf Association Championship in Detroit, Michigan.
And was playing in the amateur events of the day as well as playing golf, customer golf, a lot of customer golf at the time. Won the Ohio Amateur in 1953 and 1954, but the crowning touch was winning the U.S. Amateur Championship at Detroit in 1954, which convinced him that golf was what he wanted to do for a living.
In 54, I went back to school for a semester and had the opportunity to work on my game and play a lot more. And after school, I went to Cleveland and went to work, and then was playing quite a lot of golf and was far more prepared for the amateur in Detroit than I had ever been. And of course, that was sort of a turning point for me in golf, to win the amateur, to have the confidence that I needed to turn professional. So shortly after that, I turned pro and started my professional career.
Shortly after winning the USGA Championship, Arnold met and fell in love with an attractive 20-year-old woman named Winifred Walzer. Winnie was smitten with her handsome golfer, but her parents were less than enthusiastic about a penniless would-be golf pro for a son-in-law. So the young couple eloped 5 days before Christmas and have continued their love affair to this very day. In the spring of 1958, Arnold paid a visit to Augusta and left with the first of his 4 Masters titles.
Which of course really launched the career, and I repeated again in 1960, and by that time Arnie's Army had come into being.
Probably the 1958 Masters was the memorable event for me, for us, perhaps. I can't speak for the rest of them, my sisters. But that was probably it. That's when the public around us, the general public around us here, began to really take notice of his accomplishment.
It was at Augusta that an army was born.
Story behind it probably is the fact that at Augusta, the scoreboards were all manned by soldiers in those times from Fort Gordon, and they put up signs, "Go Arnie, go," on the scoreboards, on the sideboards. And so one of the writers, the sports editor of the Augusta paper, as a matter of fact, started talking about Arnie's Army, and it was picked up and it's been carried on ever since. It's the largest unofficial army in the world, I think.
In the years that followed, Arnold proved that his faith in his abilities to play were well placed. As his list of wins grew, so did the size of the crowds who came to see him play. But it was more than just raw talent that recruited people into his army. When asked about the secret to his adoring fans, he quipped, "Maybe it's because I'm in the rough so much that I get to know all of them personally." Gary Player once said that if Arnold Palmer asked the gallery to go jump in the river, they'd do it. Whether that was true or not, his impact on golf as a spectator sport was undeniable. His charm, his wit, his humble beginnings, and his belief in honesty and hard work endeared him to those who played the game vicariously through him. When Arnie won, they were winners too. In the early 60s, it was Arnold Palmer who almost single-handedly elevated the British Open into a major tournament and created the modern-day Grand Slam.
Went over in 1960, almost won that year, lost by a shot to Kel Nagel, then won in 1961 at Birkdale and in 1962 at Troon. And by then he was being followed over to that championship by most of the other leading tour players in America who had, up until that time, kind of forsaken the trip over. It was an expensive trip with a very small purse in those years, and until Arnie told them that you're not going to have a complete golf career until you play in the British Open.
I remember in 1960, I won the Masters again, and I went to Denver, and I won the U.S. Open. And I was on an airplane and met my wife in New York, and we were flying to the British Open at St. Andrews. And there was a reporter with us by the name of Bob Drum, and we were discussing the fact that I had won the Masters and the U.S. Open. And I was then also reminded that the Grand Slam was something that I could never win. And I said to Bob Drum and to Winnie, my wife, I said, you know, I said, there isn't going to be anyone ever win the Grand Slam as we've known it again. But I said, there is a possibility that someone could make a new Grand Slam, and that would be the 4 major championships. And that would be the U.S. Amateur, or the Masters, the Open, the British Open, and the PGA. And Bob Drum immediately wrote a story about that, proclaiming that as the Grand Slam. Of course, I lost the British Open that year, and then, but the fact that the Grand Slam was now a reality again, and we still look and play for that today. And that's really how it happened.
And that's
In a professional career filled with championships and titles, perhaps that first taste of victory is always the sweetest.
My first goals were, after I had won national amateur, was to win a golf tournament. And I was a short-tempered guy. I had, like a lot of young people, my temper maybe cost me a better start than I had the first year. As we made that northwest swing and back to Toronto, Canada, in August of 1955, where I was playing very well, and thought that I was disappointed that I hadn't won a golf tournament up to that point, and was very fortunate to have everything come together in the Canadian Open, and I won that. And as I have lived through my professional career, I've found that winning that golf tournament, and particularly that one, the Canadian Open, has meant a great deal to me through the years. And you say, well, majors, the Masters, the U.S. Open, the PGA, the British Open are important. But I'm not sure that had I won any one of them as a first tournament, it would have meant any more to me than having won the Canadian Open.
To date, Arnold Palmer's tournament victories total 92 and counting. The competitive fires burn as brightly today as they did years ago, as a young boy stepped up to the #1 tee at the Latrobe Country Club, and par was his opponent. Today, Arnold stands at the head of his own multi-million-dollar corporation, yet he devotes a good part of his time helping charitable organizations such as the March of Dimes and the Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children and Women in Orlando. When asked about heroes, he mentions names like Charles Lindbergh, Dwight Eisenhower, and John Wayne. But whenever golf and hero are mentioned in the same sentence, you can be sure the name of Arnold Palmer will be in there too.